Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today, we bring you a story titled *****, The Invitation Sent to the Wrong Address Saved Two Lives, *****. A tale of an unexpected invitation, a life-changing decision, and how an accidental event can alter the course of two lives. But was it really just a mistake? Let's find out. Mark Davis, a 23-year-old law student, had been struggling with everything life had thrown at him. His father's sudden passing had left a mountain of debt, and Mark was barely scraping by. With his student loans piling up and no real chance to find a decent-paying job, Mark was in a constant battle to keep his head above water. But today, something unexpected happened. As Mark sat at the small, dimly lit cafe on the corner of Pine Street, trying to force himself through the final pages of his law school textbook, his phone buzzed. It was a message that he didn't expect, an invitation to a wedding. Confused, Mark squinted at the screen. The invitation was addressed to him, but he had no idea who the sender was. It wasn't just any wedding. The message came with a promise of financial help, a way to clear his debts, and in return, all he had to do was show up. He thought about it for a second. It seemed too good to be true, but his options were running out. Mark had nowhere else to turn. Maybe this was his way out, even if it meant going to a wedding where he knew no one and didn't even know the couple. The invitation had been sent to the wrong address, after all. But perhaps, in this case, the wrong address could be the answer to his problems. With nothing left to lose, he clicked the confirmation link and made plans to attend. The day of the wedding arrived faster than expected, and Mark found himself walking into a grand ballroom, a place far beyond his wildest expectations. The room sparkled with golden chandeliers, and the sound of classical music filled the air, adding an extra layer of elegance to the occasion. He tried his best to blend in, but Mark felt like a fish out of water. He wasn't dressed for this. His worn-out suit and scuffed shoes stuck out like a sore thumb among the perfectly tailored outfits of the other guests. Mark had been to fancy events before, but never anything like this. But as the wedding ceremony began, something strange happened. A woman, dressed in an elegant black gown, appeared at the front. Her presence commanded the room. Her poised and confident steps captivated everyone's attention, but Mark's heart stopped. He knew her face. He had seen her before at the small law office where he worked part-time. Eleanor Brooks, the woman he had only ever known from a distance, was not only attending this extravagant wedding, she was the bride. Mark's heart raced as he realized what had happened. The invitation, sent to the wrong address, had led him here right into the middle of a billionaire's wedding. But what did it all mean? The answer, he soon discovered, was more than just a coincidence. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into Mark's unexpected encounter with Eleanor, a chance that will change both of their lives forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today, we bring you a story titled *****, The Invitation Sent to the Wrong Address Saved Two Lives, *****. A tale of an unexpected invitation, a life-changing decision, and how an accidental event can alter the course of two lives. But was it really just a mistake? Let's find out. Mark Davis, a 23-year-old law student, had been struggling with everything life had thrown at him. His father's sudden passing had left a mountain of debt, and Mark was barely scraping by. With his student loans piling up and no real chance to find a decent-paying job, Mark was in a constant battle to keep his head above water. But today, something unexpected happened. As Mark sat at the small, dimly lit cafe on the corner of Pine Street, trying to force himself through the final pages of his law school textbook, his phone buzzed. It was a message that he didn't expect, an invitation to a wedding. Confused, Mark squinted at the screen. The invitation was addressed to him, but he had no idea who the sender was. It wasn't just any wedding. The message came with a promise of financial help, a way to clear his debts, and in return, all he had to do was show up. He thought about it for a second. It seemed too good to be true, but his options were running out. Mark had nowhere else to turn. Maybe this was his way out, even if it meant going to a wedding where he knew no one and didn't even know the couple. The invitation had been sent to the wrong address, after all. But perhaps, in this case, the wrong address could be the answer to his problems. With nothing left to lose, he clicked the confirmation link and made plans to attend. The day of the wedding arrived faster than expected, and Mark found himself walking into a grand ballroom, a place far beyond his wildest expectations. The room sparkled with golden chandeliers, and the sound of classical music filled the air, adding an extra layer of elegance to the occasion. He tried his best to blend in, but Mark felt like a fish out of water. He wasn't dressed for this. His worn-out suit and scuffed shoes stuck out like a sore thumb among the perfectly tailored outfits of the other guests. Mark had been to fancy events before, but never anything like this. But as the wedding ceremony began, something strange happened. A woman, dressed in an elegant black gown, appeared at the front. Her presence commanded the room. Her poised and confident steps captivated everyone's attention, but Mark's heart stopped. He knew her face. He had seen her before at the small law office where he worked part-time. Eleanor Brooks, the woman he had only ever known from a distance, was not only attending this extravagant wedding, she was the bride. Mark's heart raced as he realized what had happened. The invitation, sent to the wrong address, had led him here right into the middle of a billionaire's wedding. But what did it all mean? The answer, he soon discovered, was more than just a coincidence. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into Mark's unexpected encounter with Eleanor, a chance that will change both of their lives forever. As the wedding ceremony continued, Mark found himself struggling to take everything in. He had no idea how he ended up in such a grand setting, standing in the midst of guests who seemed to belong to a world so far removed from his own. His worn-out shoes squeaked against the polished floors as he awkwardly made his way to the side of the room, trying to blend into the background. He couldn't stop looking at Eleanor. There she was, standing at the altar, looking every bit the billionaire's daughter she truly was. Her elegance radiated through the room as she exchanged vows with the man standing beside her. But Mark's mind was not on the ceremony. His thoughts kept racing. The woman he had seen in his office, a woman who had only been a distant figure in his life, was standing in front of him now, and she was the bride. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the bizarre twist of fate that had brought him here. It wasn't just the wrong invitation, it was an entire mistake that had set him on a path he never imagined. But there was something about Eleanor that Mark couldn't shake. There was a depth to her eyes, a quiet strength behind her poised exterior, and he wondered, what was it like to live in her world? What had led her to make such a bold decision? As the ceremony drew to a close, Mark found himself alone with his thoughts, his emotions a tangled mess. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted his musings. Mark turned to find a tall man in a well-tailored suit standing beside him. The man gave him a polite smile. "You're Mark Davis, right?" Mark blinked, surprised. "Yes, I am, but I'm not sure I understand." The man smiled again, a knowing look in his eyes. "I'm Robert Collins. I work with Eleanor. She asked me to find you." Mark's stomach dropped. Eleanor had asked for him? For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He tried to compose himself. "I'm sorry. I think there's been a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. I just got this invitation by mistake." Robert chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You may not have meant to be here, but you're here now. Eleanor was expecting you. Come with me, please." Feeling more out of place than ever, Mark followed Robert through the grand hallway, past a series of ornate doors that led to private areas of the estate. His heart was still racing. Why had Eleanor asked for him? What did she want with a guy like him? He didn't belong here, not in this world of wealth and privilege. His suit was nothing compared to the fine fabrics he passed by on the way to Eleanor's private office. As they entered the room, Eleanor stood by the large window overlooking the estate's expansive gardens. She didn't turn to face him right away, but Mark noticed the way her posture was so confident, yet somehow vulnerable. She seemed like someone who could have it all, yet there was a quiet sadness behind her eyes. "I didn't expect you to actually come," she said, her voice softer than he had imagined. "But I'm glad you did." Mark stood frozen by the door, unsure of how to respond. I wasn't really sure I should. I don't even know why I came. This all seems so crazy." Eleanor turned to him then, her gaze steady and calm. "It might seem crazy to you, but it's not. I've been searching for someone who can help me with a very important decision. Someone like you." Mark frowned, confused. "Someone like me? But I don't understand. I'm just a law student." She walked over to him slowly, her heels clicking against the floor. "You're more than that. You're a person with integrity, someone who's been working hard to make ends meet. I need someone who can understand what it's like to live without everything handed to them." Mark's breath caught in his throat. Was she really saying what he thought she was? "I'm asking you to help me, Mark," she continued. "In exchange for your help, I'll make sure your debts are paid off. But it's not just about money. I need someone to be my partner in a way that no one else can." Mark stood there, processing her words. He had come to this wedding by accident, but now it seemed like fate had brought him here for a reason. Eleanor needed him. But why? And what was this partnership she was offering? "What do you mean by partnership?" he asked, his voice shaky. "I don't understand." Eleanor looked at him with a kind, yet purposeful expression. "It's simple. I need someone to be my husband, at least for the public eye. A contract marriage, nothing more. But there's more to it than just playing a role. I need someone who can understand my world. Someone who can stand beside me when the pressures of my life become too much to handle." Mark was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. This wasn't what he had imagined, but what else did he have? Could he really walk away from a chance to change his life, just because it seemed too strange? He looked at Eleanor again. She wasn't asking for anything that wasn't reasonable, at least not in her world. "I don't know," he whispered finally, "but I'll consider it." Stay tuned as we uncover how Mark's decision to join Eleanor in her contract marriage will change not just his life, but both of their futures in ways neither of them expected. After Mark left Eleanor's office, his mind was in chaos. The offer she had given him was nothing short of life-changing. A contract marriage, just like something out of a storybook. Yet, it felt strangely real. It wasn't about love, of course, but the way she had looked at him, the sincerity in her voice, it was hard to ignore. He had never expected his life to take such an unexpected turn, and now here he was, standing at the edge of something he didn't fully understand. For the next few days, Mark couldn't shake the memory of that conversation. He couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor's proposal. He had been so focused on his survival, his debt, his future, everything he needed to make it through law school, that he hadn't truly thought about what was missing. He didn't have family, not the kind of support that Eleanor seemed to have. He didn't have love, not in the way he had always dreamed of. Yet here she was, offering him something that could fill the emptiness in his life. Mark walked around the small apartment he had been renting since his father passed away. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, and it was exactly the kind of place he had always known. Yet it felt colder now. He looked out the window, watching the city bustle by, and wondered if he could ever get used to the life Eleanor was offering. A life of privilege, but also a life that came with expectations he wasn't sure he was ready for. The next day, Mark decided to meet with Eleanor again. He needed to hear her side of the story more clearly. She had seemed so confident, so sure of her decision to make him her partner. But there had to be more to it than just a contract. There had to be a deeper reason why she had chosen him, why she had taken the time to seek him out. When he arrived at her mansion the following afternoon, Eleanor greeted him with the same calm demeanor, her face a mixture of determination and vulnerability. She led him to the same room where they had first talked, and as they sat down, Mark couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. He had agreed to meet her, but this was the moment where everything would change. "I'm glad you came," she said softly, her voice betraying a hint of relief. "I know this isn't easy to understand. It wasn't easy for me either, when I first thought of it. But I believe in what we could have together. It's not about romance, not in the way most people think of it, but there's something valuable here, something worth fighting for." Mark looked at her carefully, trying to read between the lines. "But why me? Why not someone from your world? Someone who actually fits the mold of what you need?" he asked, the question burning on his tongue. Eleanor leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Because you understand what it's like to struggle. You're not blinded by wealth, by status. You've had to work for everything, just like I have. And you don't ask for anything in return. I need someone who's grounded, who understands how hard life can be. This partnership, Mark, could work. I believe we could help each other." Her words made something shift inside of him. He had always prided himself on being independent, on carving his own path through life. But Eleanor was right. He didn't have the privilege of being part of her world, at least not yet. He had always dreamed of more, but he didn't think it would come in such an unexpected way. "So, what do you want from me?" Mark asked, his voice quieter now. "What is it that you're really offering?" Eleanor's lips curled into a faint smile, and she stood up, walking over to a table where a document lay. She picked it up and handed it to him. "I'm offering you a chance to escape your financial burden, Mark. I'm offering you the chance to live without fear of tomorrow, to build something with me. I know it's a strange offer, but think about it." Mark looked down at the document. It wasn't just any contract, it was a binding agreement, but it felt more like an invitation to a completely different life. He had no idea how this would play out, but he knew that this was his chance, a chance to finally have the life he had always dreamed of. The question was, could he take it? He stood there for a long moment, staring at the contract, weighing his options. The weight of his past, of all the struggles, seemed to hang in the air with him. But in that moment, he realized something: he didn't have to fight alone anymore. Maybe he wasn't meant to. Maybe this partnership was exactly what they both needed. "Okay," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'll do it." As he signed the contract, Eleanor smiled softly, and for the first time, Mark wondered if maybe, just maybe, this decision would lead him to a future he never expected. But one thing was for sure: his life was about to change forever. Stay tuned to find out how Mark and Eleanor's contract marriage evolves into something neither of them could have predicted. Mark could hardly believe what had just happened. The decision he had made to sign that contract felt surreal. The weight of it still hadn't fully settled on his shoulders as he sat in Eleanor's lavish living room. The walls were adorned with priceless artwork, and the view from the tall windows overlooked the sprawling estate, a life so far removed from his own humble beginnings. He was now part of it, bound to Eleanor by a marriage that was supposed to be nothing more than a business arrangement. Yet, as he looked at her, He couldn't help but feel a strange connection. There was something more to her than just the powerful woman she appeared to be on the outside. Days passed, and Mark slowly adjusted to his new life. It wasn't easy. He still couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in this world of wealth. He had attended meetings with Eleanor's business partners, had dinner at events where billionaires exchanged pleasantries like it was nothing. Each time he sat at the table with Eleanor, he felt like the odd one out, but she was always there, reassuring him with her quiet strength. One evening, Eleanor invited him to join her for a dinner at one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. The moment they entered, the hostess led them past the long line of waiting guests and straight to a private dining room. Mark was taken aback. This was nothing like the small eateries he was used to. The walls of the room were covered with rich, dark wood, and the dim lighting made everything feel luxurious. As they sat down, the waiter placed a bottle of vintage wine in front of them, uncorking it with a flourish. Mark tried his best to keep up with the conversation, but he found himself lost among the names of people he didn't recognize, and the talk of business deals that seemed to stretch far beyond anything he had ever experienced. Eleanor, as always, was poised and calm, effortlessly gliding through the conversation with the grace of someone who had spent her life in this world. But there was something about her tonight that was different. As they ate, she didn't speak as much about business. Instead, she looked at him with a new sense of curiosity, as if she were seeing him in a different light. Her usual guarded expression had softened, and for the first time, Mark noticed a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "You're quiet tonight," Eleanor said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Mark looked up from his plate, startled. "I'm just trying to get used to all of this," he admitted, gesturing to the opulence around them. "I'm not exactly used to this kind of life." Eleanor smiled, her gaze never leaving his face. "I know it's a lot, but it's not about the money or the lifestyle, Mark. It's about the choices we make. We're partners in this, and I want you to feel like you're more than just an outsider. You're here because I need you, just as much as you need me." Her words left Mark speechless. He had never heard her speak like that before. It was as if she were peeling back the layers of her carefully constructed walls, revealing the person underneath the woman who was just as lost as he was, trying to find her place in a world that demanded so much from her. For the first time, Mark felt like he understood her. Later that evening, as they walked out of the restaurant, Eleanor placed a hand on his arm. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a caution whisper. "This arrangement we have, it's not just about keeping up appearances. I've chosen you because I believe you can help me build something real. Something that goes beyond just a business deal." Mark stopped in his tracks, looking at her with a mix of confusion and intrigue. "What do you mean by that?" She paused for a moment, her expression serious. "I'm not asking for love, Mark, but I am asking for trust. I need someone who will be by my side, someone who understands the importance of what we're building. This partnership can be more than just a contract. It can be real." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Mark had never expected to find something real in this arrangement, but now, as he looked at Eleanor, he realized that maybe, just maybe, this could become more than he had ever imagined. He didn't know where this journey would take them, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a man surviving life's hardships. He was now part of something bigger, something that could change everything. As they stood there on the sidewalk, the city lights casting a soft glow over them, Mark felt a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just trying to make ends meet. He was building a future that, for better or for worse, he was about to share with Eleanor. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor's partnership grows as they navigate the complex world of business, trust, and perhaps even love. As the weeks passed, Mark and Eleanor settled into their unusual routine. Mark was still trying to wrap his head around the idea of being part of this world, the world Eleanor had invited him into. They met regularly for dinners, attended events, and worked together on the foundation of Eleanor's business ventures. But with each passing day, Mark found himself struggling to keep his feelings in check. The more he saw Eleanor, the more he realized that what they had wasn't just a partnership anymore. It wasn't just a marriage of convenience. He began to notice the small things, the way Eleanor would look at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention, the subtle touch of her hand against his during meetings, the warmth in her voice when she spoke to him. These moments, though fleeting, started to build something deeper. Mark wasn't sure if it was the way Eleanor made him feel, or the way she looked at him like he was more than just a business arrangement, but he couldn't deny that something was changing. One evening, Eleanor invited him to a private event, a gala celebrating one of the company's new projects. The venue was grander than anything Mark had ever seen, and the guests were dressed to the nines. As they entered the ballroom, Eleanor's presence seemed to light up the room. Her elegance and confidence were undeniable, but tonight there was something different in the way she carried herself. She seemed lighter, more relaxed. As they moved through the crowd, Mark couldn't help but feel out of place among the well-dressed millionaires and executives. He had never belonged in a room like this, and yet here he was, by Eleanor's side. He had grown accustomed to the opulent lifestyle, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't quite belong. As the evening wore on, Eleanor kept stealing glances at him, her eyes softening every time their gazes met. Later in the evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Eleanor turned to him. "Mark," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "There's something I need to tell you." Mark turned to her, his heart skipping a beat. "What's wrong?" She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "This partnership, I never expected it to turn into something like this. You've been a constant presence in my life, and I've come to realize that what we have goes beyond the business deal we made. I didn't just need a husband for appearances. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could see me for who I really am, not just the person everyone expects me to be." Mark was taken aback by her words. He had always thought their relationship was purely transactional, but now, hearing her speak so openly, he realized just how much it had evolved. He wasn't sure what he had expected, but it wasn't this. "Eleanor," Mark started, his voice uncertain. "I don't know what this is. I never thought it would be like this. I came here to get my life back on track, but I think I've found something more, something real." Eleanor smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the emotions that had been building between them. "I never expected it either, Mark, but now I'm starting to see what's possible." They stood there for a moment, the quiet hum of the city below them, as if the world had stopped just for a second. It was in that moment that Mark realized how much he had changed since meeting Eleanor. He had come into this partnership looking for a way out of his financial troubles, but now he was finding something much deeper. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was starting to live. As they walked back into the ballroom, Mark felt a sense of calm wash over him. Eleanor had always been the one in control, but now he felt like they were in this together. They were partners, not just in name, but in life. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor's relationship continues to grow and how their journey together will shape their futures in unexpected ways. As time went on, Mark and Eleanor's partnership continued to evolve in ways neither of them could have predicted. The boundaries they once set between business and personal began to blur. Their days were filled with meetings, events, and decisions, but there were quiet moments too, moments when they were just two people, figuring things out. Slowly, Mark started to feel like more than just a placeholder in Eleanor's life. He began to think that maybe, despite the odds, they could make this work. One evening, as they sat together at a quiet restaurant, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. It wasn't just the occasional glance or the gentle touches anymore. It was deeper, more profound. He found himself wanting to be there for her, not just as her partner in business, but as someone who genuinely cared for her. He had always been careful with his emotions, afraid of getting too close, too vulnerable. But with Eleanor, everything felt different. "Eleanor," Mark began, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "I've been thinking a lot lately." Eleanor looked up from her wine glass, her expression curious. "About what?" Mark hesitated, unsure how to put his feelings into words. He had always been a man of action, not words, but tonight, something in him felt like it needed to be said. "About us," he said softly. "About what this partnership means. I didn't come into this thinking it would turn into anything more, but now, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like something is changing between us." Eleanor's gaze softened, and she set down her glass, looking at him intently. "Mark," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've been feeling the same way." Mark felt his heart race. He had never been good at opening up, but with Eleanor, he felt like he could. Maybe it was because, in her, he saw someone who understood him in ways no one else did. They were both outsiders in this world of wealth and status, and yet, together, they had carved out a place for themselves. "I never expected this," she continued, her voice steady but emotional. "I never expected to find someone who would be there for me in the way you are. Not just as a husband in name, but as someone I can rely on. I've built my entire life around keeping people at arm's length, but with you, it feels different. I don't want to just be partners in business anymore. I want us to be partners in life." Mark's breath caught in his throat. He had never expected those words to come from her. The woman who had once seemed so unreachable, so controlled, was now opening up to him in a way that made everything feel real. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he realized that he wanted to try. He wanted to see where this could go, even if it meant stepping into uncharted territory. "Eleanor," Mark said, his voice shaky with emotion, "I don't know what this is, but I'm willing to figure it out with you. I want to be with you not just in this arrangement, but for real." For the first time, Eleanor smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I've been waiting for you to say that," she said softly. "I think we've both been waiting for it." As the evening wore on, they talked more, sharing their fears, their hopes, and their dreams for the future. The walls they had built around themselves, both individually and as a couple, began to crumble. For the first time, they saw each other for who they truly were, not just the roles they had been playing. Mark realized that what had started as a business deal had transformed into something far more meaningful. They were no longer just two people with a contract. They were partners, in every sense of the word. And as the night ended, with the city lights twinkling in the distance, Mark knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor continue to navigate their evolving relationship and the challenges they will face as they turn their partnership into something real. The days that followed were filled with new beginnings and new challenges. Mark and Eleanor's relationship, which had once been nothing more than a contractual arrangement, was slowly becoming something deeper. They were no longer just partners in name. They had begun to trust each other, to open up in ways they hadn't before. But with trust came vulnerability, and with vulnerability came risks. They both knew that their partnership would soon face the ultimate test. It all started with a sudden, unexpected visit from Eleanor's estranged family. The pressure of her personal life had always been something she kept hidden, even from Mark. Her family, a powerful group of business magnates, had never fully supported her decisions, especially when it came to her independence and her marriage to Mark. They had never been fond of him, seeing him as nothing more than a pawn in her elaborate game. Now, as they walked into the mansion, Mark could feel the tension rising in the air. The moment Eleanor's family entered the grand foyer, Mark knew this wouldn't be just another family dinner. The eldest member, her father, stepped forward with a stern look on his face. His cold eyes scanned Mark for a moment before landing on Eleanor, as if she had made some grave mistake. Eleanor, always so composed, seemed visibly shaken. But she stood her ground, her chin lifted high, as if daring them to challenge her. "Eleanor," her father began, his voice low and commanding, "we need to talk about this situation. You've embarrassed the family enough with this charade." Mark stood still, unsure of what to do or say. He had been prepared for a lot of things since entering Eleanor's world, but this was different. This was real. This was her family, the people who had always been part of her life, and now they were questioning everything he and Eleanor had built together. Eleanor's voice was steady, though the tension in her eyes betrayed her calm exterior. "This is not a charade, Father. Mark is my husband, and this partnership means something to both of us. You don't have to understand it, but you will respect it." Her father's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Respect? Is that what you think you'll get from me? From this family? You've married a man with no status, no wealth. He's nothing more than a tool for you to manipulate." Mark felt the sting of the words, but he didn't react. He had to stay calm for Eleanor. He wasn't going to let her down. Not now, not when they had come so far. But Eleanor wasn't going to let them have the last word. "You don't know him, and you don't know me," she snapped, her voice finally showing some emotion. "Mark has shown me something. None of you have loyalty, honesty, and support. And I don't need any of you to validate that." The room fell silent. Her father's expression turned dark as he exchanged glances with the other family members. They were clearly not used to being spoken to like that, especially by Eleanor. For a moment, Mark thought the tension would break. But instead, Eleanor's father turned on his heel and began walking toward the door. "This isn't over," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "We will be watching, Eleanor. Don't forget that." As the door slammed shut behind them, Eleanor took a deep breath and turned to Mark. Her face was pale, but there was a fire in her eyes. "They're not going to let us have peace. They never have, and they never will." Mark stepped forward, his heart racing. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew one thing: he wasn't going to let Eleanor face this alone. "We'll face them together," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, I'm here for you." Eleanor's lips quivered as she fought back tears. She had always been so strong, but Mark could see how much her family's rejection had hurt her. For the first time, she seemed vulnerable. And for the first time, Mark realized just how much he cared for her, not just as a business partner, but as someone he was willing to protect with everything he had. Stay tuned to see how Eleanor and Mark's relationship continues to evolve as they face the challenges of family, business, and trust. Will their bond be enough to withstand the pressure, or will the forces working against them tear them apart? The next few days were tense. After the confrontation with Eleanor's family, everything felt uncertain. Eleanor had been quiet, her usual confident demeanor replaced with a lingering sadness that Mark couldn't ignore. He had always known that she carried the weight of her family's expectations on her shoulders, but now he saw just how heavy it was. Still, he remained by her side, offering quiet support as they navigated the storm her family had unleashed. He knew she wasn't the type to let others dictate her life, but the tension was beginning to take a toll on her. Mark, on the other hand, found himself grappling with the idea of what their future together could look like. Despite everything that had happened, he realized how deeply he had fallen for Eleanor. The partnership that had started as a mere business arrangement had grown into something more meaningful than he had ever expected. He cared for her, and not just as a partner in business. He wanted to protect her, to be the person she could rely on when everything around them was falling apart. It was during one of these quiet moments that Eleanor spoke to him, her voice fragile, as if unsure of her own feelings. They were sitting in her office, the city lights reflecting off the glass windows as they discussed the upcoming charity event she was hosting. "Mark," she began, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I don't know how to do this. I never wanted my family's approval, but it hurts to know they see me like this, like I've made a mistake. I thought I could handle everything alone, but now I'm not so sure." Mark turned to her, his heart aching for her. He reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Eleanor," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "you've done nothing wrong. You've built your own empire, your own life. They may not understand, but I do. I understand you, and I'm not going anywhere." His words were simple, but they were the truth. He meant every one of them. For a long moment, Eleanor didn't respond. She just sat there, her gaze fixed on their hands, intertwined, as if processing his words. Finally, she looked up at him, and Mark could see the tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't expect to find someone like you in this mess, but I'm glad I did." In that moment, Mark realized just how much they had come to depend on each other. This wasn't just a business partnership anymore. It was something far more personal, and no matter what her family said, no matter the challenges they faced, he would stand by her side. The night of the charity event arrived, and with it, a sense of purpose that neither Mark nor Eleanor had felt before. The gala was one of the most important events of the year, and despite everything that had happened, Eleanor was determined to make it a success. Mark stood by her side, offering her unwavering support as they greeted guests, made speeches, and handled the logistics of the evening. But as the night wore on, Mark couldn't help but notice the subtle change in Eleanor. She had always been strong, but tonight there was something different about her. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was owning the room, commanding the attention of everyone around her. And as they stood together in the center of the ballroom, Mark saw the woman he had come to love, not just as a business partner, but as someone capable of facing the world on her own terms. "You did it," Mark said, his voice filled with admiration. "You turned everything around." He smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Eleanor looked at him, her face softening as she gawed, reached out to touch his cheek. "We did it," she corrected him, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that spoke volumes. "Together." In that moment, Mark realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could face them together. Their bond had become unbreakable, built on trust, understanding, and, most of all, love. Eleanor had always been strong, but now she had someone who believed in her, someone who would always stand by her side, no matter what. Stay tuned to see how Eleanor and Mark's journey continues to unfold. Will their relationship survive the pressures of family, business, and love? Or will the challenges they face prove too much for even their strong bond to withstand? The weeks that followed the charity gala brought a new sense of peace to both Mark and Eleanor. With the event behind them and her family's harsh judgment fading into the background, they began to carve out a life together. One built on mutual respect, trust, and the deepening connection they shared. They found themselves more and more at ease with one another, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Eleanor sat down next to him on the couch, a soft smile playing on her lips. They had just spent the morning discussing plans for the business, but now it was just the two of them. No expectations, no distractions. Eleanor turned to Mark, her eyes filled with a warmth that had become familiar over the past few months. "Mark," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, "there's something I've been thinking about for a while now. Something I've wanted to say, but I've been waiting for the right moment." Mark looked at her, his heart racing, unsure of where this conversation was heading. He knew how important this was for Eleanor. She had always been cautious with her words, and he could tell that this wasn't just another casual conversation. "What is it?" he asked softly, his hand gently brushing against hers. Eleanor took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving his. "I know we started this as a business arrangement, and I know we both had our reasons for agreeing to this marriage. But what I didn't expect was to find someone who made me feel seen, someone who made me feel like I wasn't alone in this world. I didn't expect to fall in love with you, Mark." Mark's breath caught in his throat. He had always known there was something growing between them, something deeper than just a contract. But hearing her say it out loud made everything feel more real. He had been afraid to admit it, but now he realized just how much he had come to care for her. "Eleanor," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't expect this either. I didn't think that something like this, something so unexpected, could turn into what it has. But I love you. I've loved you for a while now, and I don't know where we're going, but I know I want to go there with you." Eleanor smiled, a genuine smile that made her eyes light up. "I'm glad you said that," she whispered, "because I feel the same way. I want this. I want us. I don't want to just be partners in name anymore. I want us to be partners in everything, in life, for real." Mark felt a rush of relief wash over him. He had always been afraid that their relationship was built on shaky ground, that it was just a temporary solution to their problems. But now, as he looked at Eleanor, he realized that it was so much more than that. This was real. This was love. They sat there for a long moment, just holding hands, savoring the quiet certainty that had settled between them. The world outside felt distant and irrelevant in that moment. It was just the two of them, their future ahead of them, uncertain but full of promise. A few weeks later, they stood in front of the same small church where they had first signed their contract, but this time, it wasn't about business. It was about love. The wedding was intimate, with just a few close friends and family who had supported their journey. As Mark looked at Eleanor, standing there in her simple, elegant dress, he felt his heart swell with pride and happiness. "I do," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. Eleanor smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I do," she whispered back. And with those two words, they sealed not just their partnership, but their commitment to each other. From this moment on, they were no longer just two people bound by a contract. They were a couple, bound by love and a shared future. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor continue to navigate life together, building a future based on love, trust, and the bond they've created. What challenges will they face next, and how will their relationship evolve in the years to come?